I mean, Kavi, we've had a couple of conversations online where you've connected through device reps.
I have.
Isn't that right?
That's right.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
So this is actually my hospital contract in South Dakota was via a device rep. It was a device that I used in the hospital when I was in Minnesota. Had good support from them. Did a fair number of cases with this device. And I didn't know about an opportunity that presented itself in South Dakota, but one of the guys called me and said, hey, one of my buddies who's an IR here in this hospital needs some help. Do you think you can do some work for them? And that was great because that actually proved to be an introduction to that IR who I probably wouldn't have met otherwise.
Yeah.
And then I got to know them, and then we kind of hit it off. And next thing I'm committed to be there for like 8 months.
Yeah.
So pretty awesome.
One thing I've definitely learned, being 5 years out from training, is that the people who know things the first in all of medicine are the device reps. I think this was on a previous episode with Aaron and Chaz Sanders. But I mean, they know everything.
They're a great resource.
And they're just the best resource. And they really don't have any skin in the game as to who's covering what market. It's mostly just they'll try to hook the doctors up who they think do a good job with opportunities that they think will match. So
can I add
this
two
makes
thoughts
a lot
to
of
that?
sense. Yeah, please do.
I've been in a similar position with a large mechanical thrombectomy company, we'll say, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, which is they have no skin in the game. They just want to help out a lot of the times. And actually maybe they make the argument sometimes they do have skin in the game. So at one of the sites that I most recently worked at, and I think it's probably coming to an end, I launched their thrombectomy program.
Yes.
And so they know now that I'm an experienced user. And if they know of any sites that don't have anyone, or maybe one of their colleagues in a different state, it knows that there's a hospital in town that doesn't have an experienced user or any interest and there's no one doing it, they'll connect you up. And that's happened once or twice. I've made some contacts that way. And one of them may come to fruition here in Maryland, like I was talking to you about. Secondly, just to piggyback about reps, techs and nurses are also very valuable. Absolutely. Many of them are traveling.
Good point.
I have personally never got a contract from a tech or nurse who went somewhere else, but I have brought techs and nurses to sites because I've worked with them somewhere else. Yeah. One happened most recently in Florida where I worked with this traveling nurse at one place and she was just fed up with it, found out I was going somewhere else and she says, hey, do they need someone there? I was like, yeah, they probably do. And next thing I know, 2 months later, she's there. So there's a whole network of not just doctors, but techs and nurses as well that can be reliable.
So episode 3 is going to be Vishal's tech staffing agency.
Yes. But I think it's a great comment, Vishal. I want to kind of touch again on the device companies because I do think that, look, I'm probably one of the most cynical people out there. There's no question about it, right? I write what I write. I believe what I believe, which is fine. But, I do think at the end of the day, you got to understand the games that we play as a physician, right? And that the ecosystem in which we live in. And there is a business argument to be made for, staffing good, hospitals and having quality physicians in those hospitals, right? And some device reps are going to be motivated. They're going to have accounts that were, really, really profitable. Yeah. And all of a sudden, physician leaves and they, their numbers go down and they live and die by their quarterly statements, right? That's just the game that they have to play.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think a lot of them are well-intentioned, right? I think a lot of them, truly, you can have great relationships with them. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. But I think one thing I learned is it's funny you mentioned mechanical thrombectomy. I think it's like anything in life, you kind of have to follow the money. And once you realize what the incentives are for people, you can actually use that to benefit all parties, right? Yeah. So you see that with mechanical thrombectomy when it comes to hospital contracts. An IR physician leaves in a certain facility. Maybe they were a high user of a certain device. You can get connected that way. You see it in the OBL space. You see it with atherectomy, right? You see it with embolization. So I think that's all important. I think it behooves the listener to kind of understand what kind of the macro healthcare economic landscape is like and how it applies to these different settings.
I think what we're describing here is, I shouldn't say new, but certainly novel, I suppose, or adjustment to a new way of practicing interventional radiology. I don't think anybody thought about this type of IR locums work leading to some of the connections that we're talking about. Whereas typically that would be reserved for maybe a very productive private physician or an academic physician. So it's been very gratifying for me.